Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Lanoy, and I'm a product manager here at Acquia. I work on Drupal Cloud products, and I've been working on AMA for the past 6 or 7 months. And I am joined by Josh Wyhe. He's a director of product management here at Acquia, and he will give his intro in just a couple minutes. First, let's talk about the agenda. So we're going to go through an intro, kind of talk about the Drupal 7 origins, the benefits of Drupal 8 and beyond. Then we're going to dive into the Drupal 7 to 9 migration, talk about what's involved there. I'm going to give an intro to Acquia Migrate Accelerate and then a product demo. And then we'll talk about how we can use it, and we'll save some time at the end for Q&A. So feel free to drop questions in the chat and we will collect them for the end. All right, over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Emily. So hi, folks. I'm Josh. I've been with Acquia for about 7 years, becoming up 8 in January, but I've been with the Drupal community since about 2007. So Drupal 7 is sort of a part of my experience with the Drupal community. In fact, I was a part of the core maintainers in Drupal 7. So I've kind of got like an affinity here, and it's sort of a special time in some ways of it coming to life, end of life in November next year. So I wanted to sort of help as we talk about Acquia Migrate Accelerator and why we have built this tool. I wanted to first sort of explain a bit of history around Drupal 7 and its origins to help set some context there. So if we go through to the next slide, Drupal 7 was released in 2011, so pretty much a decade ago now. To give you some context, the iPhone 1 had only just come out between Drupal 6 and Drupal 7, and things like Google Maps on phones was not yet available. So there was really like a different time from the web, and the sort of features that Drupal 7 was building at that time were really kind of quite simplistic by today's perspectives. It had some small UX enhancements, starting to build out a flexible content model, building more image support. And you can see here from the release cycle of Drupal, between 5 and 6, there was about a 1-year development cycle. Up to Drupal 7, there was 3 years development cycle, and there was a whole lot of new features added and a lot of movement that happened in the industry in between those times. And then again through to Drupal 8, it was 4 years of development, and again a whole lot of new things have been added, and a lot of things have changed between 2011 and 2015 in the content management space. The other thing to kind of note here is the upgrade path that Drupal operated from back then. So in those upgrade paths, it was always a difficult challenge. Going from 5 to 6, 6 to 7, and 7 to 8 always had some sort of partial upgrade path. By partial, I mean often core was supported, but all of the contrib space, custom modules still had to be manually handled. And often breaking changes were introduced, and there wasn't necessarily an easy way to deal with that. So as the complexity of the CMS developed and the development cycles got longer and more changes got introduced, the challenge of being able to upgrade from one version to the next became larger and larger, which really was something that the community understood in Drupal 7 and sought to fix in Drupal 8, recognizing that that Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 would be the last hard migration or upgrade to take. So where are we at today in the end of life of Drupal 7? So Drupal 10 is on its way. It's due next year, early Q2. And Drupal 8 is already end of life because of the pandemic. The timings of end of life changed for Drupal 7. So it's been extended out another year. So right now we have Drupal 7 and Drupal 9 as supported versions, with Drupal 10 coming out next year. And Drupal 7's end of life will be in November 2022. And then we've got commercial Drupal 7 extended support, or the VES program in the community, that's going to keep commercial options for Drupal 7 support available through to 2025. So there's a bit of runway at the moment if you're hosting with a commercial provider who's part of that program. But otherwise, the sort of real need to get off of Drupal 7 is in November 2022, where community stops their security support and compatibility support for Drupal 7. And of course, something that is not inside this timeline here, some of the dependencies that are also going through end-of-life events like PHP 7.4 or PHP version 8, and being able to be ready for your entire code base to get to something like that as well. So let's talk about why you would upgrade to Drupal 8, or rather Drupal 9 now. So let's talk about the benefits of Drupal 8 and beyond. So if we go to the next slide here, one thing you'll notice is that the release cycle of Drupal has dramatically changed. So previously with versions 6, 7, and 8, they were going through larger and larger development cycles. The biggest thing that's changed since Drupal 8 is that the development cycle has reduced dramatically. So relatively between 5 to 8 months, every 5 to 8 months, new features are released. And then although we've added new features, the CMS has maintained backwards compatibility. What that's meant is that even though the releases are more regular and upgrading is required more regularly, the effort to get there is much, much lower. One, because there's smaller volumes of changes introduced, but two, also because that backwards compatibility makes it much easier. And that's carried all the way through into Drupal 9, into Drupal 10 as well. So just because Drupal 8 is now end of life doesn't mean you can't leap into Drupal 9 and take advantage of all of those benefits that have been delivered in Drupal 8 and the new benefits that are being delivered inside of Drupal 9 today. Let's go on to the next one. So just on the topic of Drupal 9, sorry, could you go back one? It's also worth noting that the difference between Drupal 9 and Drupal 8 is really just that Drupal 9 is Drupal 8 without the deprecated code. So when new features are added, maybe new APIs are introduced, and the Drupal version is ported to support the newer APIs, and then the old code is kept in Drupal 8 so that it remains compatible with the rest of the community and custom work. Drupal 9 simply just removes that code, and again, there's usually a solid 2-year cycle for the community and for customers to migrate that code up to Drupal 9. Probably not a huge issue for Drupal 7 users, since it's a big enough shift to not worry about that. Okay, let's move on. So some of the key features about Drupal 9 to get excited about if you're currently living with Drupal 7 today. There is now a rich media management tool built into core that will help you upload and manage media assets, allow you to assign metadata to them, sort and find them in lots of cool ways. Also, it's just a nice UI to make it easy for your editors to access that media library and insert that content into the WYSIWYG editor, or select an image into an image field for structured content use cases as well. Let's go to the next one. Layout Builder is a big one. If you're familiar in Drupal 7, panels is probably a really big module that a lot of developers work with to manage layouts in Drupal 7. But there are also other variants of that. Core had something called Box System. Other contributors, they added things like paragraphs in Drupal 7 to help with fluid and responsive layouts. And a lot of that sort of difference in a way of approaching layout in the community got consolidated into core in Drupal 8, and is now available as a Drupal 9 feature as well. So there's a great new layout builder that can sort of inherit from all those years of experience in the community and all of that development, and it's now maintained as a part of the core distribution. Next one. Decoupled. So something that was an add-on in Drupal 7 much later on, because mobile hadn't really taken a hold, because sort of web services and sort of movement in the community hadn't happened yet in Drupal 7. In Drupal 8, it was well established. The Internet of Things as an industry had really kind of developed. And so Drupal then became headless as natively. So any content today that you build inside of a Drupal 8 or Drupal 9 build, it's going to be usable through things like JSON API, which is in there by default. Plus, there's other community contributions like GraphQL that allow you to expose Drupal's content to headlessly to front-end frameworks like React to be able to build beautiful front-end applications with Drupal as well. Next slide. And there are a bunch of other great features in there. So there's things like in-place editing, content workflow. BigPipe is a great performance improvement for authenticated users. Developers get to leverage built-in configuration management. In Drupal 7, there was something called features, which was a precursor to configuration management. Views, which is something that almost every site needed since Drupal 5, has now been built into core in Drupal since Drupal 8. Structured content has just continued to get stronger and stronger, and a real strength of Drupal capability over any other CMS in the market today. Multilingual capabilities, I think Drupal's another one of Drupal's great strengths. If you're doing multilingual today, that only gets better inside of Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. And of course, mobile first or mobile experience and having responsive administration means that your content editors can work on mobiles, phones, and tablets with ease as well with Drupal's backend admin themes. Now, so let's talk about the Drupal 7 to 9 migration. Let's get to what that kind of looks like. So what does it mean for your sites, for your Drupal 7 sites today to get to 9? Well, one thing is that today you can move directly to Drupal 9. You don't have to go through Drupal 8 to be able to upgrade from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 or to Drupal 10 for that matter. Drupal 7, as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, it has a partial upgrade path. You remember it was one of the last relics of that old upgrade path style. So it's still, unlike Drupal 8, which has much easier upgrade paths, Drupal 7's path to Drupal 9 still has a partially complete component to it. The content, the features and functions requiring an upgrade may require custom handling. That means that your development teams will need to figure out the ways to get to those newer capabilities potentially. And then site theming will require a complete rebuild. That's largely because Drupal 8 introduced twig-based theming, and in PHP 7, so in Drupal 7, it was still PHP engine. So it will mean you'll need to go through a site refresh or redesign to rebuild what you have in Drupal 7 today. Next slide. So upgrading Drupal 9, there's sort of, I guess, several different aspects of that process that can require a bit of time and a bit of cost to them. There's the analysis and planning. So knowing everything that you need to upgrade, what can be done easily, what can't be done particularly easy, how long it'll take you to do those things, figuring out how you want to do them, what things you need to migrate and which things you don't need to migrate. Perhaps if your site's almost a decade old, there might be some things in there that are no longer as valuable to the business to upgrade and migrate, for example. There's often time spent in DevOps and data import, which is setting up the infrastructure to do the importing, and then maybe also a bit of trial and error. So doing an import, modifying the upgrade path, and then rerunning that import again and again. Of course, the volume of data that you'll be migrating is going to predetermine how much of an impact that part of the migration timeline will take. Then there's also the business logic. So there's usually things that Drupal core will provide, things that the community will provide in that business logic. And then there's usually a set of custom modules in a code base that really define how your organization leverages Drupal to deliver your website delivery. And so those things need to be analyzed and rethought through to be upgraded into a Drupal 9 architecture. And then finally, there's the presentation layer, how the site looks and feels. And so that could be a simple lift and shift of what you have today, or potentially a sort of revamp and a refresh of some of the the look and feel of your website. But obviously, because it's a rebuild of your existing theme, there is going to be a substantial cost and time commitment to that part of the upgrade. So this is sort of how Acquia can help make that as fast as possible, also make it as low cost as possible for you, and you make getting to Drupal 9 basically the easiest option out of any option on the market for you today. So firstly, we introduce Acquia Migrate Accelerate, and Emily's going to talk to you about that very shortly, about how that kind of works. But that helps you by automating a lot of the migration paths that exist in the community today. So if you use a lot of core and contrib modules in your site build, we've actually done a lot of work and invested a lot of time and money into supporting over more than the top 100 community modules, or most frequently used modules by the community in Drupal 7. So we've worked with different community maintainers, built a lot of patches, and made sure that that upgrade path works for those top 100 modules. We also have an Acquia upgrade assessment that we'll talk a bit more about at the end of this presentation, but that is something that we can provide as a sort of upgrade assessment, which will give you information about what Acquia Migrate Accelerate will migrate for your site specifically, but also what is left over and what parts that you'll need your development teams to think through, and what parts you'll want to analyze and figure out, if that's going to stay or if you don't need to migrate it at all. In the DevOps and data import side of things, we have Acquia Cloud that can provide a dedicated migration environment that can be plugged into your existing CI/CD pipelines, or you can create a new one for your Drupal 9 delivery. And Acquia Migrate Accelerate is also plugged into that migration environment. So there's an easy UI for being able to, one click of a button, get started in getting your Drupal 7 site built into a Drupal 7 code base as a great starting point for you to continue your migration work. And then thirdly, from a business logic and presentation layer, we have Acquia certified partners that can assist with the upgrade of your business logic. If you need some Drupal 7 expertise or Drupal 9 expertise, perhaps more importantly, to be able to understand what you're doing with Drupal 7 today and put that into logic for your Drupal 9 site, we have those certified partners that we can make available to you. We also have Acquia Site Studio, which is a different way of going about site building with low code. So the idea there, real simply, is you put a bit of time and effort into building a framework for how your site layout should work and look and feel, most importantly. And then Site Studio really empowers your content editors to create flexible page layouts and have a lot of power in what they can do day to day in building landing pages and new parts of your website. So with that, I'll hand back over to Emily to talk about Acquia Migrate Accelerate.
Great, thanks, Josh. Okay, so I'm going to dive in now to Acquia Migrate Accelerate. Let's see. So first things first, Acquia Migrate Accelerate is designed for the Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 migration. But if you are doing other migrations, like migrating from another CMS into Drupal, we also do have products to help you with that. So we have Acquia Migrate Analyze and Acquia Migrate Replatform. We won't go into them today, but if you are looking to do a migration from another CMS into Drupal, definitely reach out. We can get you connected with these products and the associated services. So just want to set that stage that, today we're focusing on Acquia Migrate Accelerate, but it is part of a larger suite of migration products. So Acquia Migrate Accelerate, it is the only tool available to accelerate kind of the end-to-end migration of Drupal 7 content into Drupal 9. As Josh mentioned, we also generate a custom code base based on your Drupal 7 site. And so at a high level, the customer benefits include a really advanced and intuitive UI that I'll show in just a second. sits on top of Drupal's powerful Migrate API. And so this helps to lower the barrier of entry for performing the Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 migration. We also provide an environment specifically for your migration. It doesn't impact your other environments. And we've baked in Acquia's best practices throughout the entire migration flow. There's a lot of lessons learned that we've learned or that our Drupal experts, have contributed. So we make sure that you're on the best, kind of the best practices from the get-go with Acquia Migrate Accelerate. So with that, I'm going to dive into a demo. So I did pre-record it, but I did that earlier this week. I'm just going to stop sharing really quick and reshare my screen. All right. And let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay.
I don't think it's got the audio.
What was that, Josh?
I don't think it's got the audio.
Oh, no. Huh. Let me try this. We just tested this out. All right, let's see.
I think when you share your screen, you have to check the box to share your audio.
Oh, okay. 1 second. I think you're right. Okay. Great. Okay. Thanks, Josh. See how this goes. All right. So I'll start here on the Cloud Platform UI. If you are familiar with the Cloud Platform, you will recognize this screen. This is the environments page for my application. My application is named AMA, which is, short for Acquia Migrate Accelerate. And you will notice here that I have the dev, stage, and prod environments that we're all familiar with. And then I have this new environment called AMA Migration. And this is the dedicated migration environment for my Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 migration. And I did not show this step because it takes a little bit of time for the provisioning process to complete, but I actually launched this environment through the Actions tab up here in the right-hand corner. And I can delete the environment if I just click on this trash can icon over here. So you can use that if you are done with your migration or if you want to start over. So a quick note about the AMA migration environment. When the environment is provisioned, AMA creates a copy of your Drupal 7 production site, so the site over here in this production environment, and copies it and generates a brand new Drupal 9 codebase, database, and file system for your new site. So it's an entirely separate codebase. And so I can use this migration environment as a starting point for all of my migration activities. I can navigate to the migration dashboard right here, and then I can refresh the environment or promote it to dev or stage right here. So we'll come back to these second two actions in a couple of minutes, but let's start on the migration dashboard. Great. So I'm going to give you a quick tour of Acquia Migrate Accelerate. One thing to note, you can actually move this side navigation around. I'll keep it on the left-hand side for now, just for space reasons. You can also expand and collapse this, this little status progress indicator. So up here, over here on the side, right now we're on the migrations dashboard. You can also check out messages. This will tell you about issues that AMA is identifying with their migration. We'll get back to this in a second. And then we have this modules tab. So as I mentioned, when Acquia Migrate Accelerate starts your migration, AMA runs your Drupal 7 codebase through the recommendations engine and identifies the best upgrade paths for your Drupal 7 modules in Drupal 9 and generates a Drupal 9 codebase that is generated specifically, based on your Drupal 7 site. So this is where you can actually go and see what were my Drupal 7 modules, and then what is the Drupal 9 equivalent that AMA has identified. So the recommendations engine includes over 2,000 upgrade paths. So there's quite a bit in there, and a subset have actually been vetted by Acquia Migrate Accelerate's team. So you'll see this little Acquia check mark here. These are the Drupal 9 modules, the Drupal 9 kind of upgrade paths that have been vetted by Acquia's team. So those are automatically installed. The other modules that are a part of the recommendations engine come from Drupal.org and haven't been, directly vetted by Acquia's team. So those are included but not enabled, and you can go ahead and enable them yourself. We just want you to kind of take a look through and eyeball them and make sure it's something that you want to add to your code base, since we haven't vetted them ourselves. And then there also are some modules out there that we don't allow you to enable from this dashboard. And these are modules that we don't recommend. They're obsolete or otherwise not recommended. And so we want to keep you from, enabling them from this view, because they could potentially cause harm. So yeah, here's a whole bunch that were vetted by Acquia's team. And then the other tab within the modules dashboard is the unknown tab. So these are contributed modules that don't have a known upgrade path to Drupal 9. And these are custom modules that you would need to port to Drupal 9 yourself. All right, and then let's head back to the migrations tab. And I'm going to demonstrate the data import functionality. So before I do that, let me give you a quick tour of this page. On the left-hand side, we have all these different content types or other types of data that you will need to import to your Drupal 9 site. And then we have the status. And so you'll see a whole bunch are ready for import. Some have unmet dependencies. And if you look at this little drop down here, you can see what the dependencies are for this content type. And so when there are unmet dependencies, that's okay. All this is telling you is that you're not able to select the content type for migration until you've migrated the dependencies. So let's migrate public files, and then we'll see all of these that depend on public files will become eligible for import. Some have other unmet dependencies, but at least the first two we'll be able to see. So I will migrate this data, or import this data rather. It'll take a couple of minutes maybe. As you can see, the import's happening here. The progress is updating over here. And you'll see there's some errors. And so those will show up in the needs review tab, which takes us to the messages dashboard. So we'll look at that in a second. Awesome. So as you can see, a couple more things opened up and are ready for import. So I'll do a couple more just to kind of show you how that works. Picking small ones just for the sake of time. Okay, and so after an import completes, you may see the needs review tab, the count for the needs review tab increase, and you may see the count for the completed tab increase. So in the needs review tab, we have the items that have completed migrating, but there are messages associated. And in some cases, you may need to resolve the issues outlined in the messages in order to import all of the data. So let's hop over to the messages tab. So as you work through your migration, you may end up with a lot of messages, and you can filter by migration, severity, type, or you can search. So it's pretty easy to navigate. There are two different types of issues that are outlined in the messages tab. The first is data integrity issues, so data validation issues. Those typically can be addressed on your Drupal 7 site, and then you can refresh the content or the data to resolve the issue here in the migration environment. So here's an example of a entity validation issue. And then the other type is more general migration issues that may need to be resolved directly on your Drupal 9 site. And so we're just calling them out here. All right, let's go back to the migrations dashboard. And so the next thing you'll want to look at, or you may want to review kind of periodically, is the completed tab. These are imports that have completed with no messages associated, so it should be clean. And you can see that, you know, all the data has been imported. And then over here in the skip tab, during the initial setup of Acquia Migrate Accelerate, you'll have the opportunity to deselect any data content types that you don't want to migrate to your Drupal 9 site. So those appear here. And then if you decide later that you do want to include them on your Drupal 9 site, you can actually unskip them. So just a helpful thing to know. Don't forget about this tab if you're looking for something that you can't find either on the in progress, needs review, or completed tabs. And then finally, as you are working on your migration, we know that, you know, new content may be added to your Drupal 7 site, or you may be making changes to your Drupal 7 production site. And you may be making changes to resolve some of those issues that we talked about in the messages tab, or just as part of your normal workflow. And so from time to time, you may want to refresh the content that is on your Drupal 9 site in the migration environment. And so we give you the ability to refresh that data directly from the Cloud UI. And then once you've done that, you will see the items that you can re-import directly here on this refresh tab. So nothing here, I haven't changed anything during the course of this demo, but that's where you would see it. And then finally, when you're done, when you have finished importing all of your data, when you finish addressing all of the issues that you can from the messages tab, and made any other changes that you want to make while you're still in your migration environment and have the ability to import data and refresh data. After that point, you can promote your Drupal 9 site from the migration environment to Dev stage. And so you do that right here. You know, don't try to do that kind of outside of this UI. We make sure that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, dependencies and whatnot that we want to account for. So do that from this view. Select Dev or stage, and you can promote it and be on your way. Okay. All right, so that concludes the demo. So if you have any questions from the demo, feel free to drop them in the Q&A and we will address them in just a few minutes. But just to kind of add a little bit more detail following the demo, we want to highlight some of the common migration challenges that AMA addresses. So we're always adding to this list, but some of the biggest ones that we want to call out are the media migration from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9, multilingual, location data, paragraphs. These are things that our team has spent a lot of time working on to make sure you have a smooth upgrade when you upgrade from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 with Acquia Migrate Accelerate. And then as I mentioned in the demo, our team has vetted over 200 migration paths. So those migrations with the little Acquia check mark next to them. I ran a report earlier this week. Here are some of the most commonly used ones. You know, it's always interesting to see what customers are using and which ones, you know, are benefiting customers the most. Here's kind of a snapshot from the past few weeks. And if you have questions about your migration, I know every site is different. You can drop them in the chat and we can see if we can answer them. If not, we'll be following up after the session with an offer for an upgrade assessment. So we can always address those with you, you know, with more context about your site. So another thing I want to call out that Josh talked about earlier on is, you know, in addition to AMA, there typically is development work required. Unless your site is super, super simple, there's probably some development work required along the way. So it's always good to plan for that ahead of time. So the first thing is custom modules. As I showed you in the demo, there's that unknown tab with custom modules that, you know, Acquia Migrate Accelerate can't provide an equivalent for in Drupal 9. So you'll need to port those to Drupal 9. AMA also can't migrate views. We can migrate everything that you need for the views, but we can't migrate the views themselves. So that is one piece you'll need to rebuild on your Drupal 9 site. We also can't migrate custom themes. And then along the way, you know, we saw the messages tab. There could be issues with your Drupal 7 site that you don't even know about because they're not causing any issues for you or for your users. But there could be some things that have kind of developed over time that you might need to address in order to migrate all of your content from your Drupal 7 site to your Drupal 9 site. So there could be some work kind of required in the middle of your migration to help you kind of move, continue on and have a smooth migration from that point on. So just things to be aware of as you're planning your Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 migration. And finally, how can you use it? So which sites are the best fit for AMA? AMA can provide, can add value for the migration for any site, but the best fits are single sites. AMA is designed for single site migrations, or you could potentially migrate one sample site within a multi-site, but it is designed for single site migrations. If your site uses a lot of the top 100 contrib modules, that's kind of our sweet spot, since we're vetting the migrations that are the most commonly used by our customers. If you have a more complex data model with a lot of content types and entity references, AMA will help you out a lot. One cool thing that you probably noticed in the demo is we follow the dependencies of your Drupal 7 site. So if you have a really complex data model, AMA is ready for it. And if you're performing a lift and shift versus a complete re-envisioning of your site, then AMA is a great fit. There's no way to really re-architect your site while using AMA. So if you do want to make big changes, you could use AMA to get to Drupal 9 as quickly as possible and then make adjustments once you're on Drupal 9. But it does kind of accomplish that lift and shift. And then a couple of things to think about as you're preparing for Acquia Migrate Accelerate. So these are in our documentation, so don't need to memorize them or take a screenshot. You can go check that out there, and we're always adding things to it, of course. But the first thing is, plan for development work, like I just talked about. Second is disable any unused modules that you have on your Drupal 7 production site. Sometimes the older modules that are kind of obsolete can cause issues because there's not a lot of people paying attention to them. So disable any unused modules so that they don't get in the way of your migration. And identify any outdated content types that you can skip during your migration. They will go into that skip tab, and you can always go back and add them later, but it's always good to kind of pare down what you want to move from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 if you can. And there's also some just common configuration issues that we've seen that could slow you down. So I won't read through all of these, check it out in our documentation, but you want to make sure that you're kind of ready to go when you start using AMA. And then finally, we really encourage you to read our documentation. It's available on docs.acquia.com. We are adding to it all the time. So as questions come in, as we identify, common, troubleshooting, themes, things like that, we add them to our documentation. So be sure to prep by reading through that. And so finally, if you're interested in using Acquia Migrate Accelerate, if you're an existing customer, talk to your account manager and they can walk you through the process. If you're new to Acquia, we'll be reaching out to you. So we can start that conversation there, or you can request a demo. And then if you need extra help, like we talked about with the development work, we have our professional services team, we have Acquia partners, and they can help with any kind of range of work that you might need as a part of your migration. So yeah, and then as I mentioned, we'll be following up after this demo with an offer for a migration assessment. So we can start the conversation there and give you more information. Oh, and then one other thing to note, Acquia Migrate Accelerate, it is included with Acquia Cloud Platform Enterprise subscriptions. It's not currently available for Acquia Cloud Professional or Acquia Cloud Site Factory. So it is available though on Acquia Cloud Platform Enterprise. All right, so let's jump into Q&A. So we have a couple in the chat here.
Yeah, so we had one question about rules integration. So is the rules module, which for anyone who's not familiar with that module, it was a module introduced, I think, in Drupal 6 that helps you sort of create if this, then that type capabilities from a site builder perspective. So the rules module came really, really late in the Drupal 8 lifecycle. It took a very long time for it to be upgraded from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. And because of that, a lot of modules progressed on in the community without support for rules integration. So it actually has less of a significance in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 architectures as it did in Drupal 6 and Drupal 7. Even today, it's only at I think an alpha level release. Yeah, alpha 6 at the moment. We do have our Migrate Accelerate team have added that to the Acquia Migrate Accelerate capabilities. So AMA will pick it up and tell you that there's an upgrade path there for it. However, it's not being vetted by our team. So it's one of those unvetted things that Emily showed in her demo earlier. So we'll be able to pick it up, but it won't necessarily mean we know how to migrate that. And that's really worth mentioning because some of the contexts, like the if statement in the rules, may not necessarily be directly transposable into Drupal 8 architecture. So I think it still makes sense from that business logic layer to look into that as part of the migration process. Ken also had a question about AMA and whether it works basically off of Acquia hosting. I do want to call out that the AMA product is engineered by our Drupal acceleration team. That team is dedicated to community contributions. So whether that's working on directly on Drupal core or working inside the community like it is with AMA to help support significant initiatives. So getting off of Drupal 7 and getting customers onto the Drupal 8 style of architecture is really important to Acquia. And so we've put a lot of time and investment into that. So everything that we've done today in terms of creating those migration paths forward. So there is a lot of patching that goes on, a lot of contribution of patches that go into the community. All of that is open and free. Acquia has participated in the community to make that all available to you. The part that Acquia provides to our customers who are using our products is the recommendations engine, which just kind of pulls all of that together and essentially compiles a Drupal 9 code base for you from your existing Drupal 7 code base. And we do that by looking at your Drupal 7 code base hosted on the Acquia platform, and then we build that Drupal 7 derivative. So it comes with a composer JSON file already pre-built. Included in that are all of those patches that we've put into the community that are applicable to your specific Drupal 7 build. Once you have that artifact, then you sort of are able to take over ownership of it like you would your current Drupal code base on an Acquia platform and are able to continue the migration process. The AMA user interface that runs on your Drupal 9 site. And so that will continue to function with the code that sits on inside of your website, irrespective of where it's sitting. So you can download it to your local development environment and continue doing your Drupal 9 migration work, for example, and push it back up to the migration environment or to another application if you had multiple code bases of Drupal 7 running across multiple applications on Acquia Cloud. Those are the only two questions we have in the chat at the moment. If anyone has any other questions they'd like to ask, please feel free to post them in there.
I do see in the Q&A, actually.
Oh, yeah?
But I'm not able to open it. Do you see the Q&A section at the top?
Oh, yeah, I see it. I see it.
I might need to stop sharing to see it. Hold on, let me stop sharing.
Okay, so on
there we go.
On Drupal 9 features, is inherently better for WCAG 2.x accessibility. I think accessibility definitely got a lot better in Drupal 9. Drupal has always paid really close attention to accessibility standards anyway. Not sure that WCAG 2.0 was defined in 2011 when Drupal 7 was originally released. So there might be a reason why it's better supported now. Unfortunately, I don't know the complete answer to that. So I don't want to say that, yeah, Drupal 9 is WCAG 2.0 compliant. If it was, it would have been available, would have come out in 2.0. That said, new themes are regularly introduced into Drupal core. And so probably something more for a theme developer to advise on whether the WCAG compliance is met inside those themes. But Drupal core standards are reasonably high that they won't regress something like that. They won't achieve a milestone and then let them come back. Why is CTools on the list of modules that can't be enabled in the AMA? I think I know the answer to that, Emily, but have you got?
I don't know. I was going to say there's a few reasons. And I don't know, why that one specifically isn't available. Was that in the demo? I imagine one of the ones on the list.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think about like views is a really good example where the views module was dependent on CTools inside of Drupal 7. But that was because the maintainer, Merlin of Chaos being the Chaos tools piece, he had a sort of very opinionated way of building the modules that he produced, which included views and panels for that matter as well. So he made CTools a dependency of those. However, the core maintainers had a different view on how to build those types of functionalities. And so they took the principles and the concepts of views and panels for layout builder, and when they brought them into core, they made the underlying frameworks depend on the APIs that already sat inside of core. So it essentially made CTools defunct. Of course, CTools does have a Drupal 8 life, and it's kind of, I guess, reborn and for different purposes. But CTools is mentioned explicitly as not to be used because it may cause conflicts in that scenario where just because it existed in your Drupal 7 code base back then doesn't mean that it needs to be there now, because it's no longer necessarily a dependency of some of those functions, those functionalities. Can you please address multi-site setup migrations? Yes, we're going to address that. So we did mention in the presentation that right now the AMA experience that Emily took you through in the demo works specifically for single site implementations. However, there is a way that we can make that work with multi-site, in that we can you can still use AMA per site. There are some things you can do with the way that Acquia environments work to be able to migrate multiple sites, and it'll really need for multi-site, depending on how many sites you have in that multi-site. I also have an assumption here that you're going to need to migrate sites gradually. So you're going to have some sites in production on Drupal 7 and some sites in production on Drupal 9 for a period of time. And so multi-site is really more just not just about having a tool that can help you migrate a Drupal 7 site, but also a broader solution of what do you need from a resourcing standpoint to get to that end goal, and over what period of time. And so we sort of really want to work closely with your account teams to help define that and make sure that Acquia can give you the capabilities, the resources that you need to help you get there. The one kind of challenge that I would call out that we have right now is we build a Drupal 9 code base from the definition of that Drupal 7 site we inspect. In other words, we look at all of the listed enabled modules for that Drupal 7 site. Many customers might have an array of different Drupal 7 sites in their multi-site that use a different collection of modules, which means we may omit certain modules from the Drupal 9 build. So that is probably the biggest challenge, but it's probably not that big of a hurdle in the context that if you have some developer capabilities that can do a composer require, it's probably quite quick to shore that up. And from the demo that Emily showed you, you can see that AMA will look at all of the modules you have anyway, and will highlight, here is an upgrade path, but you need to add it to the code base. So we're still kind of covered in that regard. Should the custom theme be recreated before the migration or after? I think it's a kind of a both. So just to kind of give you a sense of what I mean by that, you're going to run a migration initially just to get all of the data that you need to get across. And once that data and that structure is in place in your Drupal 9 site, then it's a good time to start doing your custom theme building. Once that theme building is underway, you might find that you have additional business logic that you need to implement. And since the time that you did that initial migration, maybe content has changed in production. And so you'll need to run that migration again. So you're going to do some theme building, export that configuration. You're going to do some updates to your business logic, deploy that to your Drupal 9 code base, and then you'll rerun that migration. So I think you'll do both of those things in tandem. And at some point you get to a place where you're happy, you're going to do one final migration, and that's when your theme will be in place, your business logic will be in place. Then you'll do your final change, and then push that live to your production environment. Is there a way to work on one site and switch to another?
A follow-up to the multi-site question.
Yeah, so the you can obviously, you've got your production Drupal 7 environment and your Drupal 9 migration environment, so you can obviously get back and forth between those. We don't have easy links back and forth, so you just need to have those in different tabs if you wanted to work between those two environments. If you wanted to work inside of different sites inside of the same multi-site, then you need to use Acquia's domain routing feature, right, where you associate a domain with the environment, and then in your Drupal site you use standard multi-sites sites.php to route that domain to the right multi-site. You can go from there. What will the free migration assessment tell us? So it's going to tell you what Acquia Migrate is going to help you migrate and what it won't help you migrate. So it's also going to help quantify what's left over. So it'll tell you things like some rudimentary metrics, like the number of PHP files left over, or how many lines of code is in that, what size measured in like kilobytes of custom code is left. It'll also throw in some metric data around how much content you have, how much blocked taxonomy terms, that type of thing. The idea is to, from this assessment, just kind of get a look in at all of the different things you might need to think about for a migration. And the goal from our perspective is to help you start a conversation with your developers about what you need to migrate and what you don't need to migrate, and hopefully work towards a place where you can have an upgrade plan in place. And when you have that upgraded plan in place, then you're going to be able to figure out, can you meet the November 2022 end of life deadline, or is it going to be a part of the extended vendor support, or LTS, to and figuring out when that's going to happen, and then look at every other part of the Drupal software development cycle. Is it Drupal 9 that you're really targeting, or is it going to be Drupal 10? Is there a migration path for panels when migrating from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9? That's a really good question. Let me have a look here. So Panels Mini is replaced by Drupal Core. Panels Node is replaced by Drupal Core. So I think the answer is, yeah, most of it should just go into Core, because Layout Builder was essentially the predecessor. Oh no, I'm wrong. There is a Panels module, it's not Core, that does replace Panels. That said, our team haven't classified that as vetted, so it will require some manual handling. David says, my Drupal 7 site makes extensive use of organic groups. Organic groups for Drupal 9 is currently under heavy development, and the API is not considered stable. Do you have any recommendations for migrating OG from 7 to 9? Yeah, OG was like a blessing and a curse in Drupal 7. And I know one of its successes was the groups module in Drupal 8 and 9. Probably really difficult to talk about it at this level, knowing the diverse applications of organic groups in Drupal 7, and whether there was another way or a better way of handling that. I think the best thing to do at this stage, you're really going to need to get some more technical expertise to help you figure that one out. Could you go to groups instead of organic groups? That might be a preferred method. Is what you're doing with organic groups achievable with some other mechanism? Is it community membership that's really important to you, or is it access control to certain types of content? Is that still necessary inside of your business? Those sorts of questions might help better qualify whether organic groups is something that you need. All right, we've got one more here. The Drupal 7 with the media module, I can set it up so that when an editor adds an image in the body field, the editor can choose the type of display they want to use for the image. I haven't found a way to do this in Drupal 9. Does such an option exist? Where is it? So when they add an image to the body field, the editor can choose the type of display they want to use for the image. So the image is a media entity and it has a view mode. And when you insert it into the body field, which would be like through a WYSIWYG editor, let's say, you can choose which view mode of the image you want to view. I think that should be doable. It sounds like a CK editor plugin, or when you're using the media browser, that you are able to select which view mode you insert from that media entity. I'm not quite sure the answer. It's been a while since I've looked at the WYSIWYG experience and the CMS, but I think that's kind of the general direction. Sorry, I don't have a concrete answer for you. All right, I think we're through the Q&A.
I think we are. Thanks, Josh. That was a lot, able to answer a lot of detail there. That was awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. That's all we had for today. So yeah, definitely follow up with any questions you have when we reach out with the migration assessment. Anything else, Josh, before we drop?
No, just thank everybody for your time, and yeah, look forward to hearing from you in the future.